I've had several attempts at making this recording, and it's becoming so frustrating that I almost want to give up, but it's a really important subject. I think what I might have to do is not try to cover it all in one video because, yeah. Anyway, I'm currently reading the Yesteryear book by Caro Burke, which a lot of people are reading, and I'm actually listening to it on audiobook, which is mainly what I do, and I've got a couple of hours to go, 2 hours, just over 2 hours, I think, to go. So I'm not ready to talk about the book in any sort of depth or anything, or even to talk about the book at all, except to mention it. But I have noticed that book has sparked more conversations than ever on the trad wife theme. Now, what I will say is that there's there's a lot of there's been a lot of videos about Gen X, which does tie in, and I feel like a lot of them weren't actually made by people who are Gen X, but I am, because did I say on this video that I was born in November 1973 and my brother was born in 1977, so we're Gen X. And I feel like because I've re-recorded this so many times, I can't really remember what I've said and what I haven't said. But yeah, anyway, so there's that. But yeah, so there's an assumption that people born in that era are latchkey kids. That was a thing, but it wasn't entirely. I would say that most of my friends wouldn't come under that category, but most of their mums did work, and it tended to be like going back to work, usually part time, and it would tend to be either when the children were at primary school or at secondary school, at different points. So some of them it would just be when they started school, some of them when they went to secondary school, or when the youngest child did, or something. But yeah, most mums went back to work. My mum didn't, even when we were adults, and even when we left her, she just never did again. And she's retired now anyway. And there was a point when she got health issues, but there were many years she could have worked but didn't, and that they had this really extreme sort of, you know, the the male and female divide. That was, shall we say, it wasn't the norm for the era. So it was very hard to explain to friends, and it was never really explained to me that, why they did it that way, just that they did. And there were a lot of sexist jokes from my dad as well, which was very, very annoying, and he actually knew that it annoyed me, but there was that sort of thing then. But the other thing about my mum was she did a lot of, because for 10 years, from age 16 when I left school till 26, nearly 27 when I left home, I moved in with Colin, my husband, but he wasn't my husband right at first. So yeah, it was October 2000, and then we got married in March 2001. So yeah, there was a brief period before that. But anyway, so up to the age of 26, I was still living at home. Now, there was a lot of bullying from both my parents and my brother any time, even though there were times when my brother didn't work himself. But there were times whenever I had a period of unemployment, whether it was due to just it was being unemployed on unemployment benefit or income support, or whether it was because there was a lot of unemployment then anyway. And by the way, I hated the jobs I did. I just didn't feel I had any options, so I did all these admin jobs that I absolutely hated. Made me suicidal at times. But anyway, I worked very hard to keep going on them. Some of them I did for like 2 year stretches, a year, 2 years. Some of them for not so long. Some of them were actually only temporary jobs anyway. So there were various jobs, but yeah, and but I faced a lot of bullying from my parents and my brother any time that I wasn't employed, and the extent to which my mum, who didn't work herself, bullied me into working, and it kind of it doesn't sit well with me. And also there was a time when there was one occasion I remember as a child when my dad actually challenged the position, and basically she threatened to well, if you want to do all your own washing and your own, and he realised that he wanted the deal, so he just went along with nobody rocks the boat, nobody can say anything about why doesn't she work, nobody's allowed to question her. So yeah, he just went along with the status quo. But it was one time when he tentatively, I mean, he wasn't exactly worried about speaking up to me or speaking up in general, but yeah, I would say he was in some ways scared of her, if that's the term. I'm not sure that's the term, but yeah. Anyway, there was a time when an occasion when he briefly almost stood up to her but backed down, and that was it. Other than that, I never really heard anything else. But yeah, it was never talked about of this is a thing, but I didn't really know anybody else who was in that kind of situation. It was very strange for the time. And the other thing is, yeah, I can't remember what I've already said because I've re-recorded this so many times, but the question that people tend to ask is, was my mum an older mum or my dad an older dad? No, they weren't. They were boomers. My mum had me at 23, so no, she wasn't an older mum. So it was not the expected kind of patterns of the generation, but we didn't have all the sort of trad wife term in use in that way, as we didn't have TikTok, and really, it was very isolating actually, and it was very unusual. It was very isolating, and it was never really talked about, and it kind of just never was talked about, you know. So yeah, but that's my experience, and I'm going to stop this recording now because I think the last one might have got too long. Something went wrong with it anyway. So yeah, but it's not as good as the last one I did, even though that wasn't good, but because I went off on lots of tangents just like I have here, but I did make more points, well, because it was longer. Anyway, leave it there for now. Thank you.